primaries, caucuses, and the convention process. Now we're going to get into the real part of the election system of political parties and how they exactly deal with winning their candidate and getting them to be nominated. Then, now we've been going through this as really the presidency, but again, as I mentioned earlier, you could do this with Congress, you could do this with a governorship, you could do this with a state house. It's basically all the same. It's just that it's different parameters of size in terms of the money and media and all that other. But it's pretty much the gist of it is pretty much consistent then. So what we're going to get into now is the next stage, which is stage 5 of the process of picking a president. We start out with stage 1, which is picking of a candidate. Stage 2 is the money. Stage 3 is the setting up of the primary and the caucus, and then stage 4 is the convention process, which you just finished up watching a video over with the CNN and then going through that. Now we're going to get into campaigning. Now, for the campaign, basically we're going to switch out. We're going to move away from the 3 M's, the money, media, and momentum, because that is for a primary. Now we're going to flip over, and it's going to become the 3 C's, because now we're going from basically you're running against a whole group of candidates for the primary nomination of your party. Now you're going to slug it out with just basically 1, maybe 2 other candidates if there's a third party candidate being thrown in there. So now it switches into what's known as the 3 C's, or the look of a campaign. The 3 C's is being confident, comfortable, and competent. Now, what that means is if I am comfortable, that means I have to be comfortable in front of the camera. I got to be comfortable in front of the media. I have to look just like this is an everyday experience for me if I'm running for office, whatever office it may be. Okay, I cannot look nervous. I cannot look agitated. I cannot look upset. Any of those things are killers for a candidate who is running for office. They must be able to maintain that comfortability in front of the camera and in front of the media. 2 is I must look confident. Okay, confident is dealing with that ability to show themselves in times of crisis and the ability to be able to be something that the American people want when there is a major event going on. So and not only do I have to look confident when there's times of crisis, but I got to look confident what my answers are to questions. I got to look confident that I know exactly what I'm talking about. I got to look confident when it comes to making sure that what I'm doing on the campaign trail is the right thing, and that I am doing it for the best interest of not just myself, but for the party. And that's very difficult to do sometimes. Then I got to look competent, and that's smart. Okay, and that again is sometimes very difficult for candidates to do. They will say something, do something, act in a certain way that the media picks up on, and it just makes them look very foolish, and it can be again another downfall of their candidacy. Go back to the 2016 race there, and you could just take, and I'm going to pick on the Republican side because on the Democratic side there's only 3 candidates, but you could even look at that. But on the Republican side, really, you have your Donald Trump. Did he look confident, comfortable, and competent? He had 2 of the 3. He very much is comfortable in front of the media. He loves the camera. Confident, very much so. Is he competent though? Does he know what he's talking about? No. If you go back through, he had answer after answer he was giving, and speech after speech. He was lying. He was making stuff up. And the press would find out about this. They would report on it. They would say it, and it didn't matter. His base, that 25-30% of people just continue to support him no matter what. Ben Carson, same thing. Some of the other candidates, same deal. That they maybe had 2 of these, but they definitely didn't have all 3 of them then. And you got to have all 3 if you're going to want to win. Now, the next one then is getting into. Just switch that out here just a minute. Okay. Next one then is strategy. Okay, so what do I do now? I'm basically going to take my candidate, and what we have to do is we got to mobilize our base. Now, 30% of the vote is the base. Now, again, the Republican Party, it's a little less than that because they've had some turmoil with their voting population stuff. But you got to get that base mobilized, and you got to get them out there to support. And that's one thing the Republicans know how to do, is they know how to mobilize their base. On the Democratic side, not so much. When it comes to presidential elections, yes, the base comes out and votes. When it comes to just congressional elections, no. The Democrats usually stay home, and that's why they lose elections. They have a bigger majority of the population of their party, but they can't get them mobilized to get out there and vote sometimes, and that is their big downfall. So it doesn't matter if you can outnumber your opponent. If you can't get them to vote, it ain't going to do any good. Number two, you got to persuade. Those are those independents, okay, and that's 15 to 20% of the vote. Which again, you take about 40% of the independent vote. If you can grab 15 to 20% of that, at least half of that independent vote out there, if you can pull them into your circle, you got a great chance of winning then, because now that boosts you up to almost 50% of the total amount that you need to win. Now, the last one is, can you convert? Can you switch over? Can you flip some of those that are diehard from one party, and can you get them to come to your party? Now, why would they do that? Is a lot of times, let's say, for example, again, on the Republican ticket for 2016, you had very hardcore supporters of Donald Trump. Well, if all of a sudden, Mark Rubio gets the nomination, well, here you have, those supporters that were of candidate A, and they're diehard supporters, and now you got candidate B that actually becomes the winner of the nomination. Those diehard A supporters may not go vote for candidate B. So either they may stay home, or they may look elsewhere for a candidate. They may go to that independent party. They may go to that minority party. Or they may go to that other party, depending upon who that candidate is. So there's some times that you will see that conversion that could happen. Now, the next one is presidential elections are decided by three factors. Okay, party affiliation. That's how much power the party has. That's how much finance and money. Two is the economy, and that's very important. If you're the party in power and the economy is doing very well, we got some great growth, we have job growth, we have income growth, we have the country doing well, then probably that party is going to stay in power and may even grow. If the economy is doing very poorly, if there are a high number of unemployment, if income is not growing, if there is stagnation in the economy, then the party in power is in tremendous amount of trouble then. And that's going to be another key when it comes to the election outcome. Now, the last one is character. And again, we're getting to see a real split on this anymore, because, it's hard to tell anymore which the honest politicians, if you want to call them that, but, really most politicians are all honest. They're all good people. It's just their ideology is what gets people very upset about it. Hillary Clinton is a very honest person. Now, a lot of people would say, no, she's not. The way she does things, the way she acts sometimes could put her off for some people, but she really does want the best for the country, as does Rubio, as does any other Republican on the other side. The key there, again, is the integrity. How well do they present themselves to the American public, and are they hiding something? Not that they're not being honest, but are they being totally truthful? That's the problem sometimes with these politicians. Okay, finally, the last three keys then is you got to be able to win the media, you got to be able to win public opinion, and you got to be able to win the interest groups. Okay, and we're going to get into all three of those then. This video is on your worksheet packet. What you need to do is watch it and answer the questions over it, and make sure you get down the information about negative campaigning. All right. When it comes to the media, there are basically 5 types of media: newspaper, magazine, radio, TV. Those are all the old style ones, and they're still pretty important. They still have a relevance out there. There are people who still do read the newspaper, although they probably read it online more than they do anything else. But the newspaper is very important for local elections, governorship, state house, those things. That's where people are going to get their most media from, is from that. Now, if you're talking national elections, not so much probably from the newspaper, although the newspaper still is the best way to get the most depth and thorough type of news that you want to get. Magazines do a really great job as well. It's just that they're usually printing stuff that's a little bit older, not current, up to date, the daily basis. So again, but they do a lot of special reports. They're very in depth, very good for factual basis. Radio, great way to get your news from. And again, a lot of people with satellite radio and those kinds of things do get that, and there's 24-hour news on the radio, so that works pretty good. And then TV, where you have all these cable networks and everything else that's going off there. The problem with TV is it's trying to win ratings more than it is trying to actually publicize the news. So instead, you actually have a news, not story, or news event. You more have a TV show that is called the news. And that's what Fox is. That's what MSNBC is turning into, even CNN, because they need viewership. So they are going to highly publicize, highly take an issue that maybe is not that important and blow it out of proportion just so they can make the news instead of reporting it then. Then finally, you got the internet, where you got to be very careful. The internet has a lot of different sources to it for news media, but most of them are very biased. Most of them are non-factual. Most of them are opinionated and not giving the information out correctly. You got to be very careful about that internet. But that is the fastest growing one of them. The average American spends 70 minutes a day trying to get their news, 32 from TV, 15 radio, and you can see the other statistics there. Then there is this website here that I'm going to give you as well, and to click on and go into, which gives you a lot of really good information. And what really it's going to get into is this idea that we think that there's a lot of multitude of news media outlets out there. In actuality, there are only really 6. So the idea that we're getting a vast disparage of news is very incorrect. The fact of the matter is, most of our news is coming from a very limited source. And so therefore, when one news agency gets a story, the other news agencies, the other 5, are going to pick up on it very quickly and run with sometimes virtually the same story. And we've seen time after time after time where facts are wrong, where news agencies have got it incorrect. They'll say that there was an event in which 50 people were killed, and then later it comes out that there was only 20 because the news agencies aren't doing their job. They're picking up news from what they can grab from the other news outlets because there's not very many anymore. And so basically now we're getting a conglomeration, or basically a news agency that has no competition anymore, and it's really becoming a major problem out there. So this is a good website to kind of mesh into that and kind of see that stuff. Okay, what influence does the media have on politicians? How can the media influence politicians? There are 4 ways. One is what's called vehicle, which allows the leaders to drive the issues of ideology of the nation. Okay, and again, you get the news media out there that will pick and choose the stories that they want to go with. And sometimes there are very important news stories that needs to be brought up, and unless the news media decides that they're going to drive it, it's going to die, or they will take it out for a test run. And if it doesn't pull very well, if there's not a lot of people watching dealing with that story, it's going to die out. This again goes back to the 2016 election, why Donald Trump was so popular. He was a vehicle for the news media. Not that nobody thought that this guy was really going to actually, get anywhere, but he was great for coverage, and he was great for numbers for the news media. That's why they went with him so much. Gatekeeper, that's the power of the media to check on leaders and determine what facts are to help public get the whole truth. Okay, and again, you see this over and over again with politicians, but the problem here is sometimes the public doesn't care if if there's lying going on by these politicians, and if there's misquoting of truth and those kinds of things, because obviously they still like the story. And so even though the news media is supposed to be out there giving the facts of a story and supporting it, sometimes they're misleading on their job on that. Okay, the third thing the media does to try to influence politicians to get them to change their behavior is what's called spotlighting, which the press can make or break a story and get people motivated and driven to change. And again, there's just example after example out there when you watch the news and just anything going on that you will pick up on very quickly, how the news can take a story that maybe you wouldn't think would be a really major thing, and all of a sudden it just blows up into a really major event, and then all of a sudden it goes away very, very quickly again. And it just depends. Sometimes you'll see about a shooting, or you'll see something happen in one city or one town that goes on, and the news media is there and they pick up on it and they'll run on that story, and then all of a sudden 2-3 days later you never hear about that story again. A couple year ago or so, or a little bit longer, there was a huge thing on immigration in which that guy from San Francisco, he was a illegal immigrant, and he found a gun, and he accidentally shot a woman and killed her. And boy, the news media and the politicians has picked up on that. We got to deport all these immigrants, and we got to get rid of them, and all this other stuff, and we got to get rid of the sanctuary cities. And that ran for about 2-3 weeks, and then all of a sudden you never heard about it again. That's what the news media can do, is they can make and break a story, and then these politicians will ride on that wave of the news media coverage until they see that it's starting to die out, and then they will jump to the next wave then. Finally, the last thing it will do is talent scout. It makes or breaks a candidate. And again, here is very important, because if you're running for office and the news media will not pick up on you, you're not going to win. You know, look in the 2016 race. There was a lot of guys down there who were good candidates for the Republicans, and they never got traction because the news media never gave them a chance. Even though they were very good politicians, the media wanted that Donald Trump. They wanted that Ben Carson. They wanted that candidate who, regardless of the fact that they were good or not, they gave out news media. Okay, you're going to have another video that's going to get into how politicians influence the media. That's propaganda technique, and you have another video that's going to go through all that and outline over that for you. So I'm going to skip over that. And finally, the last thing we're going to watch is these two ads about how the news media and how politicians can use the news in order to get their point across. And these are two very and very good ads by Ronald Reagan way back in the 1980s, which again, watch how when you go through the propaganda techniques, come back to these two videos and watch them and see what techniques Reagan used in order to get his point across very, very well, and was able to make very good points then.
It's morning again in America. Today, more men and women will go to work than ever before in our country's history. With interest rates at about half the record highs of 1980, nearly 2,000 families today will buy new homes, more than at any time in the past 4 years. This afternoon, 6,500 young men and women will be married. And with inflation at less than half of what it was just 4 years ago, they can look forward with confidence to the future. It's morning again in America. And under the leadership of President Reagan, our country is prouder and stronger and better. Why would we ever want to return to where we were less than 4 short years ago?
Okay, and here's the other, whoops, sorry. And here's the other one.
There's a bear in the woods. For some people, the bear is easy to see. Others don't see it at all. Some people say the bear is tame. Others say it's vicious and dangerous. Since no one can really be sure who's right, isn't it smart to be as strong as the bear? If there is a bear.
Okay, now what that had to do with is the first ad, if you watch that, you would think that the United States was in a huge boom of prosperity going on. And in fact, we were in a very bitter, very hard recession in the United States. But the Reagan ad made it look like everything was fine and that everything was getting better again, and it really worked. He defeated his opponent, Walter Mondale, by a huge number. The second one played into the fear factor of foreign policy against the Soviet Union back at a time when the Cold War was immense and it was a very terrible time period. That bear was representing the Soviet Union. And again, very popular ad. You don't see Reagan in these ads, except for a picture of him, but it really does play into all those propaganda techniques that were kind of talked about in the other video then. Okay, we're going to finish up this one now and get into your last set of videos then, and so then we'll be done.